Before we go into the agenda and talking about the event itself, I also wanted to kind of introduce a little bit. So we have a guest judge today, and that's Juliana. Juliana, if you don't mind, just a couple of words about yourself.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks a lot for inviting me. My name is Juliana. I am a reporting lead at 𝗪𝗁, and I specialize in data visualization and accessible design. And I also have a blog on Power BI and design called 𝗪𝗵𝗁 𝗂𝗏𝗄, and a YouTube channel called Accessible BI.
There we go. So you also guys have a QR code in your screens as well. So if you want to check out Juliana's content, just feel free to scan the QR code, and that's going to take you to her channels. But yeah, definitely some amazing stuff, some interesting stuff that you can see there, and definitely learn from. That's the one thing that I kind of noticed from it as well when I skimmed through it very quickly. But yeah, so what today is all about. For those of you who have been to one of these before, you already know what's going to go on. But for those of you who are new here, essentially what this is one of the community events that we host for the challenges. This time is going to be the Onyx data for June month, and this month we had social media and marketing analysis. So different, basically different metrics, different KPIs related to that topic. And what today is all about is going through the top 5 submissions. So we're going to be going through the top 5, looking at those reports and giving our feedback on what we think was executed very well, what few things might have been done a little bit differently, what might have taken a better turn or something like that. But yeah, regardless, I hope you have fun. I hope you all learned something new and valuable, most importantly valuable, right? Because chit chatting is nice and all, but getting something out of it's even better. So I think really without any further ado, we can jump into the first one. What do you say, Juliana? You ready?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's go. So quickly sharing the screen as well. Let's go for this one. This is the right one. Always double checking which screen I'm sharing, right? Kind of want to make sure that not sharing the wrong stuff. All right. So yeah, like I said, this month we're going through the June data set, and the first report that has gone into the top 5 is going to be from 𝗪𝗏𝗁 𝗂𝗏𝗄. So congratulations to you. Let's open up the report and take a closer look at it. So from my point of view, the one thing that I kind of liked about this report is that it's not too overcrowded, right? But at the same time, one thing that I definitely caught my attention is just the alignment, guys, right? You want to make sure that things align properly. It doesn't seem like a bit of a case. For example, okay, it's a little bit lower and everything like that. But the one thing you have to remember is every single time you open up a report, you can only make the first impression once, right? And that's just what it is. You cannot recreate it. You can make the report better looking, better, for example, for eye and easier to use, but that first impression is a very brief moment whenever a person opens up the report for the very first time. And these are going to be some of the things that they notice: the alignment, the color palette, and these sort of things. So alignment is very important. Right? It's not like it's the end of the world. No, it's easily fixable. You go back to report, you just adjust the alignment. It's not the end of the world, right? So you can easily fix that. But
I agree
overall,
with you.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I really like these reports. Like the first page is really clean, as you mentioned. Um, and I like it's quite playful as well. I like the way that you use a background, but it's not overwhelming at the same time. But alignment and also perhaps rethink the top filters, the slices. It's not kind of the same style, so can be quite difficult to understand what's happening here. But I agree with you that it's quite clean design, and I really like it.
Definitely. It's one of the things that I think I kind of appreciate about it. Like I said, right, that it's not too overcrowded. Because it's one of the things that might happen a lot of times when you kind of grade these reports is you try to it's one of the things that every single Power BI developer has stepped upon at least once. It's trying to compress too much information in a single screen. It's just what we do, right? We try to give everything straight away. But I like the approach on this one. There are a few things that I want to point out here as well to kind of pay attention to, and that is, for example, the ordering. And this is not just in this report. This is something I've noticed across multiple reports. That, for example, whenever you have day of the name of the day, it's good. It allows us to understand things quicker. But the problem with this is that unless this is in chronological order, it's very hard for people, for example, to just kind of read it easily, right? So one thing that I would probably do is make sure that they're sorted out in the correct order of how things are supposed to be, right? I do know that there is a difference, right? In different parts of the world, the week can start on a Sunday, sometimes it's the Monday, but at least there has to be a chronological order afterwards, right? Here we can see it's Friday, Monday, Saturday, Sunday, so it's kind of jumping up and down all around, right? So these sort of cases you want to eliminate as much as possible, just to make it easier for everybody to go through the report. Other than that, I like one thing that you kind of did here as well. That is for the cards, instead of, for example, creating a report page tooltip or something like that, you kind of went with a little bit of a different approach, and that is you're creating these little drop boxes that give you an insight into that, right? I think it's a very nice, neat touch that can be easily sort of utilized and extended even further on upon. For example, explaining if it's possible to showcase um, a little bit more about the KPI itself. Like, for example, how it gradually deviated over the time and these sort of things. Again, you don't want to overcrowd it, but this is something that you can definitely utilize to kind of enhance on that part a bit more. So that's one interesting thing that I really liked about it. And of course, have heard me say this 10 times before. I'm a fan of big dark designs, so I like this part. What can I do about it? It's just what it is, right? But at the same time, this is the part where you have to be very cautious. And the one I'm talking about is make sure you always check all of your bookmarks. Because if you click on this little drop down, which I just used previously, it's saved to the previous state and it takes me back to the light mode, right? So you got to make sure that all the elements are in the proper state. They're keeping you in that particular form. You're not jumping from one to another. Again, this is not the end of the world. Every single one of us has made bookmarks and some mistakes with them. It's not an easiest task, especially if you have a lot of them, right? That's why a lot of report developers try to avoid bookmarks as much as possible, because it is a tedious task. But they do give you a lot of flexibility when it comes to these sort of things. So that's one thing. The light and the dark mode, I like the switch from it. So that's a nice little touch there. Regarding the navigation itself, I like the icons. They're not too complex or anything, but the problem is I don't know which page I'm currently on. You can kind of see it with from the subtitle that it changes. So for example, if I go to here, I can see it's platform content performance overview. This is going to be the time and regional engagement trends and so forth. If I hover over that button, I can see that this is the one that I'm on, but you want to make it also visually easily noticeable for the user to see, okay, what page am I currently on? So I don't have to guess and just try to basically move around all of these and try to figure out where I'm currently at. Again, how do you do this? Quite easily. Take exactly the same icon, just change the background, for example, slightly, either lighter or darker, and just replace the two icons with one another. Basically, create two states, right? So that's another thing. For the analysis itself, I think
For the
it's very
analysis
well
itself, I
done.
think it's very well done.
Yeah, Juliana, go ahead.
Yeah, Juliana, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just because I think the tables, I use tables in my own report, but I think the way they are formatted, not only regarding the days of the week, but it's just adding clutter. I think there are really clever things we can do in terms of table that helps to understand what is the main insight. So you could add some icons or like the bars, something that indicates that there is something happening there. Because if we just look the way it is, it takes a lot of effort to understand and to take a key message from it.
Because with the tables, I think the most important part is you
With the
probably
tables, I
wanted
think
to
the most
emphasize on
important part is
something.
you probably wanted to emphasize on
Here,
something.
it just
Yeah,
seems that everything's the same importance.
Here, it just seems that everything's the same importance.
yeah, absolutely. So, we can add tables, but just make it a bit like, what is the message that you want to give it to your user? So that's quite important.
Absolutely. But yeah, otherwise, I think it's a good report. It's very well made. There are just some bits and pieces, right? And I know that some of you are going to be thinking like, "Oh, come on, this should have been done on the very first try." It's not as easy as you think. You sometimes just miss things because you're so focused on something else on the report. So
Easily missed.
overall, yeah.
Overall, yeah.
What can be useful is to have like a fresh pair of eyes. So ask someone in your house. Someone in your house to go through your report and click through, see if things are working. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the things that we always try to recommend is, right, by trying or giving it to somebody else, they're going to notice things that you don't notice because, like you, Julian, said, it's a fresh pair of eyes. You know what it's supposed to do, whereas they are just playing around and messing with things and seeing, okay, what happens if I do this? What happens if I click this? Right? They don't have an agenda, whereas you know what it's supposed to tell. And that might give you some interesting insights, definitely. But yeah, overall, I'd say this is a good report. There's a reason why it's in the top 5. So congratulations on getting here. And I think we can move on to the next one. So let's go ahead and open up the next one. So the next participant that has gotten into the top 5 is Crystal Andrea Souza. So congratulations, Crystal. Let's open up the report and have a closer look at it. Juliana, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I like it. I like because so it's a darker mode and it's so difficult to get the right contrast. So you found a really good color that goes well on a dark background. I will kind of change because you have like a lilac color and a white text on it. If you make the text a bit darker, it actually works a little bit better in terms of readability. But I really like how you organized and on your donut chart there, you add not it's not only based on color, so you have the label showing what it is and the percentage. It's a bit cluttered the way it is, but it's really good because there are some shades of the same color that's very difficult to tell them apart. But you've got a very good contrast, and I really like that that main page. I think it looks really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. From my taste, right, I would say that there's a bit too many KPIs because they take a lot of space, but that's a nuance, I would say. It's not a game changer. You can easily just adjust this based on the needs. But there are a few things that I noticed here. And one of them is it's probably an oversight because everything else has been done very well. But if you hover over a button that hasn't been selected, I think that this sort of highlight state is something you just missed.
Yeah.
And like I said, since we're end users at this point, this is something we notice, right? But
Yeah,
again, go
and I
ahead.
think the other thing with these lists is they're not placed in a consistent way across your report. So it means that it takes longer to understand how am I going to interact with it. So it's really useful to first of all use one type of filter options. So the ones on the left hand panel, there are also buttons.
Mhm.
And because they are in completely different place on your screen, it's very difficult to understand if those buttons are there for decoration or if they're also part of the filtering option. So that was the only thing for me. It was something that really caught my attention more than the highlight one. It was the lack of consistency on your filter options.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that we understand it's very tricky. You want to play around with different things, but at the same time, you have to understand that you are the report developer, right? So you know exactly what these things are going to do. Whereas if somebody new gets to this report, they need some sort of a training. So in those cases where you have a lot of differences in how you can interact with things, you have approached this already with the information button. This is why we always tell you to create something like this. But in these cases where you have varying, for example, slicer formats and varying different locations between the pages and everything, my recommendation usually is instead of just opening up the report straight away, at least for the first week or so, force them to come to this first, right? They can always close it, like for the first week when they're getting used to things. Afterwards, you can remove it and keep it as a secondary option that they can open whenever they need to. But for example, kind of forcing it and giving them this view allows them to understand, okay, so these are actually selections as well. These are the filters. Okay, I understand the navigation. Now I can start to use properly the report. Because with these colors, I like the colors, like you said as well, Juliana. But I think that, for example, it's very inconsistent in that sense that here I can clearly see what I have selected. Here, to be fair, I kind of have to squint my eyes to see the
Yeah,
selected one.
it
So
needs more affordance. The buttons, they
yeah,
need more affordance to look like we have to interact with them. And then indicate as well, right, when it's selected, why it's selected.
yeah, absolutely. But overall, I like the first page. I think it gives enough information. If we go to some other pages, this is what Juliana was mentioning, right? For example, now the slicers are here at the top. So you want to kind of keep them consistent. The reason for that is because then the user knows where to look for them. He doesn't have to look around the page and be like, okay, it's up, down, left, right. Where am I going to select these things? So that's one thing. Uh, Besides that, tables. One thing about the tables, usually try to do this. I get that it's not always possible, but try to avoid scroll bars as a plague, basically. Sure, vertical axis, I get it. Sometimes you have thousands of records, so it's pretty much impossible. But on a horizontal axis, you try to get rid of them as much as possible, right? Because now, in order to kind of completely see this, I have to move to the side, then I have to move up and down, then I'd be like, okay, what was this one? Oh, okay, it's actually post this. So it's very hard for navigational purposes. Sure, I can kind of go into the focus mode, but then again, this isn't what the intentional sort of use was for it. So
And also, this also adds a little bit of clutter. I found that this page compared to the first one, it's more cluttered. There's got more stuff in it, and I think kind of you started so well, like with in terms of use of space. I think we feel really tempted to put everything on a page, but try to just, okay, what is the purpose? I'm adding this table, I'm adding this column chart. Why am I adding it, right? What kind of insight my users will take it away? So before adding all possible combinations, think about that. And the drill through options are also really good because it gives you another depth of understanding without without overwhelming at first sight. It removes a bit of the clutter. So I think using the drill through options helps in
mhm,
removing these extra uh, visuals that we're very tempted to add on a page.
absolutely. Don't forget that the drill through was created for a reason, right? It allows you to focus on that row level data, like the entry point, actual invoices, and everything like that. Whereas these graphical parts are mainly there to showcase the most important bits and pieces. They can navigate to the more detailed analysis from either the visual or just a separate page, however you decide to go through it. But don't try to just compress everything in a single page. I know every single report developer has done this. It's just how we basically learn. Nobody can kind of forget about it or miss it. It's just what happens.
And
um,
often I had clients that they want me to add so many visuals
oh
on a
yeah,
page, like affects the rendering time as well. So we don't want that. So I always try to say, okay, 5 to 7 visuals per page is a good number to avoid overwhelming people and get them the chance to, all right, okay, I can breathe, I can look at the screen and understand what's happening. So I think it's really important that how many visuals we add with that, so we don't get people, oh, I don't want to have a look at this anymore because, oh, they ask, well, can I have the Excel sheet because I can just copy and paste whatever I want.
yeah. The favorite friend sentence of every Power BI report developer. So can we export this? Yeah,
Yeah,
sure, sure. But it's just what it is, right? One other thing that I noticed here, and this is something you always have to pay attention to, right? Never forget that Power BI reports are going to be used in different environments. So it could be that they're going to be typically used on a laptop, for example, or there's going to be a stationary monitor doing this sort of daily monitoring or whatever it is. So you kind of think about that approach here. I know that nobody knows the full sort of actual audience for these reports, so you can accommodate every situation. But the one thing you can definitely do is take the report, publish it to services, and see how it looks when it's embedded. Because that's a completely different view from Power BI Desktop, right? And the reason why you do this is, for example, this one right here says top 10. I'm kind of missing 6 of them. And even if I try to zoom out manually and grab all 10 of them, because I can reposition the charts, that's one good thing about our visuals, I still only see 5 hashtags. So what I probably would have done, just seeing how big the chart is A, increase the size of the chart because there's no way around it. B, leave it top 5. because you can see there's enough room for top labels, 5 top labels with no issues. Going above it is going to try to overlap things. Overlapping means somebody's not going to get the full information. So you always try to give that enough information, sort of give that sort of enough amount of information. But yeah,
And that gets
like I
us
said,
back to, what actually matters in my page. What should I add? Because sometimes the visual, it's better to have that specific visual larger and add less additional visual. But what is the message? And if you may be missing the main message because you want to squish in more charts or more tables, so it's something to keep in mind.
yeah, definitely. Worst case scenario, if you want to focus on total clicks by hashtag and total hashtags, what performs best, create a field parameter, use
Yeah,
this space for one single visual and allow the user to basically move between those two.
toggle. Yeah.
So it's always just a practice and trying to figure out what's the best approach. If we go to the third page, see, this is what we were kind of going for when we said about the tables, make it a little bit more informative.
Yeah.
But at the same time
Absolutely.
here, the heat map, and because I have to move back and
Pro.
forth, it's good, but
But I
but
think that
otherwise,
page, it looked really good. I think it was the
yeah.
way that the visuals are displayed. There is a bit more breathing space in between the elements, and I think it looks really good. Like that one and the first one, the middle one, the second one, you could have just tried to tidy up a little bit. But I do like that page as well. Despite the scrolling to the side, there is kind of a purpose of having that table. Um,
Hmm.
the heat map style does help to understand what's happening.
Yeah, definitely.
Just
Overall,
was something as well that I note on that report is if you go to the map, the numbers inside the values that are on the map, they're quite tiny.
hmm
So you can see the larger ones, but the ones that is, of course, got less values, it's tiny and it's quite difficult to read. So it's wondering what can we do to avoid using too small fonts because people look at reports from different screen sizes, and that can put people off or not even to realize that there is a value in there. So just try to increase the font size a little bit.
absolutely. Or alternatively, very quick fix, instead of placing the value inside, because once you place it inside, it's tied to the size of the actual bubble.
Yeah,
You can place it outside because then
outside.
it's a completely separate scale. Sure, it doesn't look as neat, but at the same time, you have to kind of go for, either its form or function. In this case, I think function would have taken over, so you need to showcase those labels. But overall, I had this feeling, right? I started here, I felt like, okay, starting good, have KPIs, everything looks good. Try to compress everything that is possibly available to me. And here, the third page is, well, this is what I have left. If all 3 pages would have similar consistency to just 3 or 4 visuals per page without, excessive tables or anything, I think the report would feel a lot more sleek, a lot more easier to navigate and just go through. But overall, I think the report itself delivers the story itself. You have a lot of different sort of views that I can go for. You can look at the executive summary, you can look at the geo analysis, you can look at hashtags and everything. The charts itself allow you to drill down to see multiple subcategories and everything. So that's all good. But I think this page kind of just too overcrowded. That's the main thing. Other than that, amazing report and congrats on getting into the top
Well
5.
done. Yeah. And I love it. It's so refreshing to see a dark mode that actually works.
Yeah, it's not an easy kind of trait to fulfill, right?
No.
All right, the third report that has gotten into the top 5 comes from Maria Drobina. So, Maria, congratulations into getting into the top 5. Now, let's take a closer look at it. So, for this one, definitely, once you open it up, this definitely looks like a dashboard you would typically see in a C-level suit, right? It does allow you to kind of focus on certain things, but for C-level suit, you have to remember for them, the main thing is going to be the KPI cards, which tell you the story. And these KPI cards, I think, deliver very well. So they show you the main KPI percentage itself, or the number, whatever it is. It shows you the trend of that value. So you're seeing, okay, how is it overall growing, or are we increasing or decreasing? And then you see the comparison versus a previous month. The only issue I have with these cards is, what is the previous month? Because currently I haven't selected anything. So you would guess that that's the previous month from this current month, right? And I have talked about this every single time, guys. Don't forget it. In the slicer for 2025, it shows me that there's data until December, which is not the case. In the data set, December is actually empty. I think we went to like May or June, right? So
May.
always try to eliminate any cases where things can be broken. Trust me, there's going to be that one person. In this case, that's me. You have to be worried about. I like to break reports because I have to create them, right? So I always try to break my reports as well. It's part of what I do. But these are just some of the things you pay attention to. So, but without that, I think these cards are very good. They're very well made. They showcase the main important things. They showcase the trend. Even without them, this feels like already sort of an executive page, right?
And I like the colors. It's very well used, very good contrast.
Yeah.
There is on the bar chart, I think there is the highlighted ones in orange, but the other one's a bit too light. If you could have a little bit more contrast with the white background, would
Hmm.
also work on the bar charts. But
Yeah.
I think it's been used really well. The use of colors here is just the right. It's just right. It just feel right. I really like it. And you see that there is affordance as well. You can see which, if you're on engagement or post, you can see what's happening. I really like it. The consistency of the filters. There is the information button on the top. So I think it really delivers in terms of story. Everything that I need to understand, it's highlighted there. So that's really good, the use of colors. There is only one thing that I noted in one
Hmm.
of the pages, because it's orange. I think it's on the other next one. Next one, yeah. So
Yeah, we'll
on
give it a
the
time.
on the top 12 hashtag performance, you have because your data color is orange and you have the red. It can be a bit like there is not enough contrast. You see, there is a difference there. So that was the only issue of using the orange color, is when you try to use another color on the top of that that's very similar, it can look a bit confusing. So just be careful if you want to use red and green to
Hmm.
status or performance, get a data color that is a bit more different to those two colors.
Yeah, and I think even if we're talking about sort of color, let's say association and everything, right? The thing about the green and the red is psychologically what we're thinking always is good and
Yeah,
bad, right? In most cases, it doesn't necessarily mean, like in this case, okay, we can see that these hashtags and these certain months have performed the worst. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad thing,
bad.
right?
Yeah,
It's just that it performed worse than it does on the other months. So what I would have probably done is what Juliana mentioned, right? With regarding the colors, I would just Google and say, okay, I put in the hex code into Google and say, what's the contrast color to this? I'm not a purely colorful guy, right? So for me, these sort of things help, right? I just post in the hex code, I see the color wheel and try to understand, okay, what's going to be a good contrast color? There's even sites that allow you to see the contrast index.
yeah.
So there's different things on how you can work with this. But
But if
overall,
you don't have
definitely.
to look it, just look, okay, orange and red, they're very close
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
So it's a bit different. It's going to be difficult. But I think overall, the use of the color was done really, really well. And how important things were highlighted, it helps you to, okay, that's the main takeaway from that each one of the visuals. I really like it.
Yeah, definitely. So the one thing that I really like about this overall is, like you mentioned as well, is just the consistency. So when I'm moving between the pages, everything feels okay. I changed the visuals, I changed some of the information, but the overall layout and everything feels the same, right? I know where to look
Yeah,
for my switches and everything. The only thing that threw me off guard a little bit is if we go to performance overview, right? For example, these field parameters, they change everything, and I can see things changing everywhere. Good. I go to hashtag and correlations. I have these. These change everything as well. Cool. I go to region and temporal trends. If I switch for these values, they only change the map suddenly. So they don't affect anything else on the page. So what I probably would have done is I would just extend this line or visually kind of make this to be part of this chart.
yeah.
To visually say that this is going to change the value for this specific chart rather than the whole page.
Definitely. Because the user
like,
think there is something broken here.
yeah, right. It feels like there's some sort of a disconnect. Was it like this, or is it just not loading? Should I give it a bit more time, or?
Yeah.
But like again, it's not the end of the world. These things can be easily fixed. Just some few visual manipulations and how things are being perceived and everything. I think that overall it works very well. And one thing that I really like about sort of the way and how you approach the title and the subtitles is you're actually explaining what the page is about, right? What are the main things that I'm trying to understand from it? So you're kind of guiding the user. Okay, there is a bit of information here. I get it, but these are the main things you kind of want to focus on right now. So I like that approach as well.
And very smooth, because I see a lot of people adding a lot of text, but it's so much clutter that it is being done. It's well balanced. The amount of text to explain is just enough.
Yeah. And with the bold, I think it's even better, right? Can it kind of states, okay, pay attention to these keywords.
Yeah.
Don't want to read the whole thing? Just look at this one. Peak engagement. Cool. But yeah, overall, like it very well. For the table, again, same thing as I mentioned before, right? Whenever you have something, make sure it's sorted correctly in both ways so that I know exactly what I'm kind of looking at, rather than just jumping to Friday, Monday, Saturday, Sunday, and just all around the place, basically. Right? These are small little details, but they are gonna matter. Trust me. If not us, somebody else is gonna tell you this. And better here than in actual real work reports. So learn from these things, make them better, and
And people
just
note it, because I've
oh yeah,
done something similar, and they thought, oh, can you please change the order? It wasn't with days of week, it was with status, right? Red, amber, and green, and it was like amber, green, amber, red, and green, and then like, can you
hmm
just put in a logical order? Minor things. And then
oh
once
yeah,
it happens to you with a client, you will never forget it. So it's better to learn here.
absolutely. Like my best experience is whenever I'm trying to explain color and the importance of colors or communicating with your end user was when I was recreating our own internal reports, right? So when we started using Power BI, I was recreating reports that we had in, for example, CRM systems or something like that. So I created a report for the sales team which had every single KPI, everything that they requested. They said, "Oh, it's all good. Everything can be seen. Amazing work. All good." The good thing about Power BI is you can actually see how many times the report is being used. And when I checked like a month later, I saw that it's only being used like maybe once or twice a week when it's supposed to be a daily report. So I'm like, what's going on, guys? You just told me everything's good. Why is it not being used? And what it turned out is that from the CRM system, they were so used to having specific colors for specific product lines that it just threw them off. And I just, that point, I was just, you do realize, guys, the changing colors take me like, I don't know, 3 minutes. I could have done that like a while ago. You could have been using the report that I built for you. So I changed the colors. Now we're using the internal report. So those
But
are
that's why,
small little things.
yeah. And that's why it's important to understand your user and ask about if they have color preference, even if it's not branding colors, but do you
Yeah,
have a preference for that? Because it does, color affects a lot, as I said, how we interact with the interface. And even if you just don't like it, it will put you off to look at the report.
absolutely. But yeah, overall, I really like this one because it kind of gives you enough information to showcase everything. The only probably last thing that I noticed is whenever you have lines in KPI cards, make sure that you do similar to how has been done here. Whenever I select something, right, it doesn't cross filter the line on everything else. You don't want to leave me with just a single dot that doesn't really tell me anything. That's a common mistake that even I sometimes forget about, and I'm like, no, oh, come on, I'll fix it. I'll fix it. But yeah, overall, amazing work, really, and congratulations in getting into the top five. Now let's go to the next one. So the next report that has gotten into the top five comes from 𝗪𝗪𝗁. So 𝗪𝗪𝗁, congratulations. Now let's open up and see the report. Now, for me, when I first opened it up, the one thing that I can definitely say is it doesn't feel overcluttered, which I really appreciate. It might seem simple, right? At the same time, be like, yeah, but it's not super detailed. I get it, but not everything has to be super detailed and extensive. Sometimes I just want to have something simple. And the first page goes for it, right? I really like it. You have the field parameters that allow me to switch between different values. Good job. I have the possibility of hovering over and getting the report page tooltip as well, showcasing
Yeah,
the hashtags. And I think this is actually a very good approach for the hashtags, because the hashtag chart itself, it takes a lot of space.
it does. Yeah. I
The
think
only
as we
yeah.
discussed on the previous report, the drill through, it helps you so much. Or when you add little tooltips as well, if you
Hmm.
add, there are clever ways of using tooltips in Power BI that helps you to remove the clutter that will make you feel overwhelmed at first sight.
Yeah, absolutely. The only other thing that I would probably play around with a bit more, and you can see it's situational, right? Like for example, if I hover over April or June, I don't have any issues. If I hover over some others, I have this little scroll bar. So always just play around and see, okay, what's sort of the middle ground of these. You don't want it to be too big, because that at that point there's going to be like half of the tooltip just not visible. So I think it's a very nice approach here. I think you also adjust it, because that's not the default tooltip size. Definitely, I think default
Yeah,
is
you can change
sort
the
of
tooltip
wide.
size.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so play around with those. For the colors, I like them very well. The only color that I'm not a fan of is this light
yeah,
purple. It's
it's a bit
it's
too
kind of
light.
blending. Yeah.
Yeah,
And especially don't forget that one thing is, if you can see it on your screen doesn't mean that everybody sees it on their screens. There's a lot of properties on this every single display that they can be changed. The contrast, the brightness, the saturation, the hue, and suddenly that is just an invisible slice. So
yeah.
be
For
very
me,
careful
it's
with these.
visible. But I do like the contrast between the lilac and the darker blue. It's really good
Yeah.
contrast. It's good to have good contrast on your data colors as well. But the third one, definitely, even if it's, I don't know, another shade of blue, but that is a bit, or a darker gray perhaps. But that one is very difficult to see. And the same comment as I did previously on the slicer, you have a white text on the lilac color. Ideally,
Hmm.
you should put it a bit darker so it kind of pops out a bit better. You fully understand that you are on that page. I mean, the color tells you a lot, but I think it will go better with a darker font.
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
also really like the front page. I think it's really clever. I like how the total post was put on the card. So
Hmm.
the first card on the left, I really like that. It's different from everything else. I really like, but I got a bit confused when I went through the report because there is a page that you have the KPI cards, and that because I think we are used to see first the KPI cards, it's a bit counterintuitive, but it is a different approach, and I think it's valid to highlight that.
Definitely. The one thing that I kind of liked about this approach is, instead of giving me four KPI cards right next to it, right? Because all of them have sub metrics basically, you
Yeah,
tell me
yeah,
what I'm currently focusing on, instead of just showing all of it and be like, yeah, but you can see
everything.
all of them. So you're
Yeah, I
guiding the
agree.
user.
That's why I think it was a really interesting approach. But because the way that I'm conditioned to look to a report, it feels, and then the second page they had the KPI cards. It felt like, oh, shouldn't this be the first one? But I really like the approach. Being innovative is not, it's not a bad thing. It's really good to show that, especially because it aligns very well with the what you're reporting on.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you can see the difference, right? Here it seems like the same card is being split into four cards, whereas there I had one card with just switches.
Yeah.
So keeping it consistent probably would have helped. The other thing that I noticed here is you already have these icons, right? Without an explanation, I can't understand what all of them are. If I go here, suddenly the same things are looking completely different.
Yeah.
If you have those icons, use them consistently throughout the report. So people get used to it, they know what it is, and whenever you reuse the same icon, they know what it means.
They will associate straight away when we are more consistent. It's the same of using colors, right? If you have
Yeah.
profit in blue, you're not going to use profit in orange the next time. You're going to keep the same color, and the same is for icons. That helps as well. And
But yeah.
I also found that the buttons on the side, yeah, I think it's not obvious what you clicked. You could have.
Hmm.
I like that they hid the filters. I like that, but then there is more filters on the top.
Yep.
Um,
Right here, and clear
yeah,
filters here. The alignment a bit as well. I know it's tricky, it's annoying sometimes, but it's just what people notice, guys, right? And the more you kind of get used to paying attention to because I can tell you straight away from my experience, right? I was the guy who was just creating reports based on what needs to be built. I wasn't paying attention to every small little detail. But that's why we have a design team that every single time I give them the report, they'll be like, what is this three dots? So, and they tell me exactly pixels and everything. And now when I build reports, I'm like, okay, just to make sure I don't get the same comments 20 times in a row, I'm going to make sure these align, these are a word of close to each other, and those sort of things.
Yeah.
So it's just practice, right? You're not going to make a perfect report for a single time. And in my personal opinion, there's no such thing as a perfect report. There's always
No.
going to be something that can be improved, something you can change, and so forth.
Even in my experience, right? I design something and I found it's great. 3 months later, I look at it, well, could have done
Yeah.
differently. There's always something that I found, oh, that's horrible. I should have done differently. And I think it's really nice. I think the day that you look to a report and you think it's perfect, I don't need to change anything. It's the day that you just retire, because there are so many new things coming up all the time. Um, Sometimes you look at the people's work and you feel, oh, that looks so cool. I'm going to try to implement something similar. So it keeps this spark. If you think that you're just perfect, I think, yeah, it's not good. It's not a great place to be.
No. And Power BI is a massive sort of environment where there's a lot of new things coming in. Not even just from what Power BI itself is pushing out, but from what people kind of figure out on how to do. The one thing that you're going to probably learn over time is Power BI is mastered at that stage when you understand that a lot of things are not natively built, but it's a workaround of a workaround for a workaround, which somebody created as a workaround. So there's a lot of different things that you can achieve here with
Yeah.
a lot of creative thinking. But the more you create these, the easier you understand the basics, the better you understand, okay, the concept of why this is so important and everything, right?
But it
But
can be overwhelming. So whenever
oh,
someone starts
absolutely.
to focus on the basics, master the basics, and then you can start investigating a bit more level of complexity, or even to, okay, I'm gonna do this completely different. But get
Mhm.
used to the basics, the how you use normally the visuals, because that it's easier to just think about, oh, I could done that, but add, I don't know, an error bar and create something different. So I think, they're changing all the time. You're not going to master everything, so don't get overwhelmed. At least learn the
Absolutely.
basics.
And the one thing that I can recommend from my side is instead of just deleting your old reports, no, just carry an
Oh,
archive with you. Because at one point of time, there's going to be some request or something, you'll be like, I think I've done something like that before. And then you can go back to one of your reports and say, like, oh, okay, I can do this. Because you can't remember everything, right?
no, do you know
Especially
what I
when it
do?
comes to, yeah, go ahead.
I have a spreadsheet, and whenever I see a cool tutorial, but I'm not using it straight away, I save it. And it's always got a time, oh, I've seen that somewhere, and I go to my
Yeah,
spreadsheet, right? And you click there and you can watch and do it straight away. Because of course, if you see something really cool but you don't practice, you're not going to learn it. So save it, save those links, screenshot nice reports that you've seen, also reports that you really like and you want to try to have similar approach. So have your kind of a library. I think it helps a lot, especially when you want to do something different. Or I don't want to keep doing everything the way I do. So
absolutely.
it's a good practice.
I thought you were going to say something like, whenever you see something, just make a new blog post like I do.
I don't have that time.
No, I don't think anybody has time for that. But yeah, definitely overall, I think it's very well executed. There are some bits and pieces like the icons, the alignment, and that sort of stuff, but those are minor things that you can easily adjust. Overall, the report is great. I love the fact that it's not too overcrowded. Here, I would say with all this sub KPIs and everything, you're cutting it close to the line, but you're still kind of within the boundaries where I would say that's still okay, right? The only last thing that I would probably mention is, and this is something that's I don't know for what reason, but lately this is happening a lot more. Whenever you have numbers, whenever you have things changing, make sure that you play around with what's available to you and see if all the labels and everything fits. Like, for example, total engagement fits until I hover over it. Because you increase the size with few pixels, but now suddenly it's total engagement. Sure, we can get what it is, but again, those small little things. Switch to post, for example, suddenly the arrow is not by the side, but it's underneath. just play around with those sizes of the boxes, select some of the categories, and like Juliana said as well, give it to somebody else to play around with. Because you as a developer just sometimes miss things because you've been working on it for so long. Once they say, they're like, why is it like this? And you're like, why is it like that? I can fix that.
And
So,
ideally, someone who doesn't know Power BI,
yeah.
someone hasn't got a clue.
Because then they don't limit by what's possible by Power BI.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, definitely amazing work. Congratulations in getting into the top 5. And I think we now have the last entry that's in the top 5. So let's go ahead and go through it. So the last submission that comes to the top 5 comes from 𝗪𝗲𝗄𝗧. So congratulations. Let's open up the report and take a closer look at it. Juliana, you want to take a first hit at it?
Yeah, I can. So I think this report has got really good visuals, but the layout perhaps could be done a bit differently. So I like the way that you use the KPI cards, and it's got the time series as well, but it's on the right side, right? So if you think how we start reading, we start from the left to the right. So ideally, our KPI should be on the top because it pops out straight away as something really important, or on the side, on the left-hand side works as well. So if you kind of rearrange the way that the visuals are, that would help in understanding a little bit better what you're trying to, the message from your report. I also found very confusing the navigation because I think there is on the top overview, content performance, and there is another one I can't read, and then there is the icons on this side as well. I think they do the same thing.
Yep.
I wasn't sure what's happening there. So
I would say it's instead of just kind of separating them, because I get it's the same navigation, but you tell me which page I'm currently on. But at the same
yeah,
time, it's very confusing to basically jump
yeah,
back and forth to understand where I'm currently at, right? I get that the order is the same and everything, but what I would probably done is keep one of them, either this or this. Don't
yeah.
have both of them, and just have a subtitle that tells me what is this page.
What you, yeah, I think that would be a good option. But I got a bit confused when I saw those two options. But I think, and I like the light color as well. I like it's a light background. I like the blue detail on the left side. I think
Hmm.
when we use the left-hand side navigation, it's a very well-known design pattern, so it's something really good to have. I think I like the depth of analysis. I like that when there is the heat map, it highlights what is the important details. But I think there is a little bit too much clutter. It could have
Hmm.
perhaps have less visuals and try to build some sort of hierarchy, because the way it looks like is everything has got the same weight, and we know that in a report we have a lot of things, and there are some things that are more important than the others. Just make sure that you build that kind of visual hierarchy, that you show this is the most important, this is the second level of importance, and this is just if you want to get into the details, for example. So think about that hierarchy and how we naturally scan a page, and place the most important things where we first look. Because if you start, it's just like if you get a massive text on a screen, you start reading, you start skipping, you just, we don't necessarily consume the entire content. Naturally we scan, and we
Hmm.
scan using some really well defined patterns, and really help us to tell the story in a report when we use those scanning patterns.
Yep. There are a lot of different concepts on how you can create a report, right? I've had customers where, for example, actually instead of moving between the pages, they actually create basically like a massive infographic where they just scroll down. But the reason for that is because the way and how they built the report, or we were building with them, is basically that's the story of how it flows, right? They're using the typical Z approach. So you're starting from top left and you're just scanning through the rows, and
Yeah,
that's how everything went down to basically the funnel, right? So that works as well. Do the same for every single page that you create. People are naturally going to gravitate towards what's comfortable to them. So in most of the world, there's going to be a typical Z approach, right? If you're a Middle Eastern, where you start reading from the other side, it's going to be the other way around. So you play around with both of these approaches depending on the locality of where you're creating these. But the one thing that I noticed as well whilst we're going through this, I didn't notice at first, I don't know why. You have enough space. Why on earth would you leave these little sidebars? Right? It's basically a pixel to the left and pixel to the bottom, like one row, but there's enough room to just completely eliminate them. My guess is quite simple. It's just an oversight. Or secondary option is you wanted to align them, but there's just not enough room. If you can align them, but, sorry, make them perfect very easily. Instead of just forcing it to be that way, just extend the size of both things. It's not gonna, nothing's bad is gonna happen to the scatter plot if it's like 10 pixels bigger, right? Whereas for the table, it does make a massive difference. I don't have the scroll bars anymore. Yeah, so that's one thing that I noticed. I think there's too much information as well, and the other
Yeah.
thing is not just that it's too much. I think it's conflicting in a sense that you're forcing me to look at different colors where colors have meaning, but then you're switching the same colors for different charts. But here it's a completely different thing. Now you're focusing on this part and on that part, so we're focusing on time here, but then the day here. So it feels like there's no natural flow to things, right? What I would want to see here is somehow focus. If it's the day or sort of the time analysis, then the day and the sorry the day itself plus the time of the day, and then something going explaining those, for example, parameters or something, right? So give me that natural flow of things. On the overview page, I think overall it's very well executed. This is just what I'm not a fan of. Columns with rounded corners, I'm not a fan of it. And the other thing is, these gaps are completely unnecessary. It skews how you perceive visually things. I do understand it allows you to kind of create a separation between them, but it also forces you to kind of think, is there supposed to be something in between them? And this is what I was doing. I was hovering over and expecting something to pop out, but then I looked at the legend and be like, oh, there's actually just two things. It's just a gap, right? So I would say get rid of that. For this one, since this is our visual, one thing that I could definitely encourage you to do is under the tooltip, you have an option of hiding rows with no data. So one of the things that we do here is we allow you to always see all the components, or vice versa, showcase only available components, right? So this is something you can play around with. And I think in this approach where you have a lot of the platforms that don't have some of the, for example, content types, it's better to only focus on what's available. And instead of a scatter plot, oops, sorry, completely went wrong the way. Instead of a cluster chart, I would make this a stack chart just to kind of save the space a little bit and focus on the split of it a little bit more, I would say.
Yeah, I think the way it is, because you have one platform that's got a lot and everything is so small, you can
Yeah.
barely see what's happening. So definitely whenever that happens, think about what is the mess I'm trying to give here, and what is there a better way to show that there is a difference, right? Because there you pretty much just see the dark blue column and that's it.
Yeah, the rest of them are seem like just noise in the background, right?
Yeah.
um, the other thing is, if you decide on a design style, keep it consistent. Why do these have a background and suddenly these do not have a background? Right? If you're creating that sort of a layout with these sort of rounded shapes in the back, like that's the background of a chart, keep it the same here. So it's the same flow of how things are being perceived. So I can see those are separate different elements. Whenever you're
And
doing this,
alignment again.
yeah.
The donut charts for me.
As well, top, bottom,
Yeah.
like I know it's tricky, but it's your job to think about these things, right? People are gonna
You know,
notice it.
a good way of using donut charts as well, because you give each slice to each part of it, but you have space in the middle. So if you can try to add the total, the overall total as well, because maybe you have, oh, it's only one, but one out of how many, right?
Hmm.
So it gives a better understanding to your user to, okay, what is the context? Oh, it's 3, it's 10 out of what is the context based on what? So you can use that middle space to give like an overall count as well. Um, of course,
Yeah,
depends on the case, but I think
and
it
I
can
think
help.
the funniest part is if we go to third page, maybe it was a different report because somebody else was doing this with the KPI cards in the middle as well. right? So it gives you the total, but you can focus on those subsegments. Here for the cards, like I said, something I jump across a lot, you don't want to have this happening. Because for the end user, he doesn't really understand what just happened. Why is there suddenly just a single dot, whereas here I can see a line? You can allow the cross filtering for the numbers, but do not affect the line if you select something on it. Or alternatively, if you just want to don't worry about this at all, just don't allow them to select anything here. Make sure that this chart doesn't filter out anything, right? Or worst case scenario, what I've done as well is, because as soon as people have the option of hovering over and seeing the tooltip is great because it kind of allows them to see the information. But at the same time, we've had cases where this is just purely informational, right? So you can see sort of the trend, but you can't interact with it. So what we ended up doing is basically just putting another transparent box in front of it, just so 100% nobody can select anything, can see the tooltips, and they don't have sort of an urge to select anything, right? Because if you wouldn't have this highlight, you wouldn't have that urge to select it, right? It's all about how we are used to sort of touching things, seeing things, interacting with things, and so forth. So
And the other thing about these selecting just getting a dot, if it's a less experienced user, the user may think, oh, I broke something, right? Because
mhm,
the person is not expecting to everything just appear, just one little dot. So there is a piece of education you also have to have if you do something that's quite radical, let your users know you cannot break it, because that can be an impression as well. Why did I click here and everything disappeared?
yeah,
Because sometimes they don't even expect that when you click,
yeah.
it will do something.
So one thing that I've recently started doing as well, for because these sort of implementations are becoming more common, right? Because everybody sees them, everybody wants to try them out, and so forth. So one of the things that I recently started doing is I'm creating essentially two different measures. One of them is excluding the X's that I have here, so it's always going to showcase the whole line. That forces the chart to always be there. And what I'm doing with the second series is I'm only looking for that selected value, and then I'm using that as a reference point. So whenever somebody selects it, it highlights a particular point that I have selected. So that if I select something here, right, on every single chart, suddenly tung, 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 there's a dot on all of them. So they know that we're talking about this point right now. But again, somebody would like it, somebody's going to be like, just keep it as is, right? It all depends on the end user at the end of the day. Your job is to showcase these options. For them, it's to say what they want to do. But overall, I think it's very well designed. There are few, like we said, few bits and pieces. Overall, it's very analytical in a sense that allows you
Yeah.
to focus on different parts of things. It allows you to switch between them, so that's good. Here, the only thing that I would probably do is this light blue is not the best option, especially for a heat map and with this color. It sort of blends in with the background, especially for the light parts of it, right? So contrast is something you have to always keep in mind. But other than that, I think it's a good one. The last thing that I forgot, Juliana, I think, mentioned this as well, but slicers at the bottom, definitely not the greatest approach. That is the last place where I would be looking for a filter, because you want think about it like this, right? If those filters affect everything that's on this page, and if you have them at the bottom, having at the bottom would usually mean that they're the least important things there.
I missed those slices. I thought there
There you
was
go.
one.
See, because the slicers affect everything that's within the page. So visually, you want to make sure that they're at the top or at the side, and kind of sort of implementing, but imposing that doing something with these is going to affect everything that you have here. This makes me feel like it might add some details at the bottom, like extra or something, right? Or just kind of fine tune things. But slicers at the bottom, never a great
No,
approach.
and they don't look, if you don't know Power BI, right? You look at them, you just think, because it doesn't say select platform, it doesn't say anything. And it's not in a place that we naturally look for filters. So
Hmm.
it can just be seen as, oh, it's just a bit of clutter. Because when I look at this the first time, I missed completely that those were slicers. So just be very careful in terms of where you place them, and if there is enough affordance, which is, does it stand out to make people understand you have to interact with it?
Absolutely. But overall, I think it's a good report. Just bits and pieces that you might improve upon purely from how the charts are being styled and the overall layout. The data analysis is there. It's just the design part that I would recommend you to focus on. And the one thing that I always kind of try to remind you guys as well, right? The feedback that we're giving is don't get offended by it. It's just what is going to be happening in the real world as well. There's not going to be a situation where people are going to be sitting there like, no, it's a great report, but then behind your back talking, that's just garbage. So it's the feedback that you want to hear, right? You want to hear about these things because these things are the ones that are going to matter. There's like a plethora of things that we're not mentioning here because those are very situational, based on the customer, based on the situation, based on how the report is going to be used and so forth. But these are the basics that you need to know about: the layout, the color, and the chart itself. If you're not about the chart itself, the one thing that I would always recommend is, if you don't know how to properly use the chart, is first of all, read what the chart is meant to showcase. So if you're using, for example, a column chart, okay, so what is column chart typically used for? If you're using a donut chart, what is the typical use case of a donut chart? You don't have to just force the visual to do something for you because it looked good. No,
Yeah.
this chart is supposed to tell a story. If it's the chart that's not supporting the story, change the chart. Simple as that.
Absolutely. Nothing worse than using the wrong visual.
Yeah, don't try to force donut chart to showcase 50 categories. Just don't. Right? It's the chart itself is good, right? Don't get me wrong. Donuts are hated for a reason because people are misusing them heavily. But if you use it
Yeah.
properly, like for example right here, it's a good approach for the donut chart. It shows everything clearly. You can compare the sizes and everything. So
There are ways as well that you can't everything that if you have too many small slices, you can always call that other together.
yep,
And so that is a way we just show what actually matters. Everything else is just a little bit of noise because it didn't contribute much. So that is a way you can, if you really want to stick to use a donut or pie charts, try not to use pie charts. Donut charts are a little bit better than pie charts.
yeah,
But there are ways to reduce the number of small slices, or if you have 10 slices, think about, well, perhaps I should use a different visual.
absolutely. So I think we've gone through all of them. So now it's time for me to hide the screen for just a second, find the winner, and announce the winner, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're all here about. Let's see. Double checking who's the winner, because the last thing I want to do is look like a complete dum dum and showcase the wrong one. Be like, hey, this is the winner, but hey, it's not.
Sorry, wrong tab.
Wrong, wrong screen, wrong screen. All right, sharing the screen, hiding what's unnecessary. So the winner for this month's challenge is, the screen goes live. There we go, Maria Drovina. Congratulations, Maria.
Congratulations.
Yeah, definitely. In our opinion, this month, this was the best report that was submitted. It was visually pleasing, very well maintained, sort of few bit of inconsistencies regarding the design, but overall it's just a very good report. That's something that I would expect from not even a junior Power BI developer, but somebody with a little bit more skill.
Absolutely, yeah. Well done, very well done, very well executed. And I think you can see the time and effort, even though that it's not like my client, right?
Yeah,
It's a big challenge. You can see how serious it's been taken. It's really, really pleasing report. I saw it straight away. I was just like, wow, that is impressive.
absolutely. So amazing work from Maria. Um, from our side, the one thing that I would recommend, or not recommend, but wanted to remind you guys is, if you could fill in the feedback forms, that would be greatly appreciated. Main reason for that is so we can understand, well, whether or not we're doing a good job or a bad job, right? Because the last thing we would want to do basically is have these sessions where nobody gets any value and we're just doing them because, hey, why not? So if you're not getting any value, tell us what you would like to see so we can try to figure out how to implement that or how to touch upon those things. So definitely let us know what you think about the sessions and everything we're doing here. On the other hand, what I'm looking forward to is going to be the next month's challenge. So, for instance, the next month's challenge goes live. Don't forget that there's going to be 2 webinars. One is going to be the workshop webinar, where we go through the data set, we talk about it, we see what sort of visuals could be used and everything. And then, of course, the top 5 announcement, right? Don't forget that all these materials are available to you. You can rewatch every single webinar afterwards as well. And if you're just starting off and you plan to maybe submit your first report, don't be afraid, right? Nobody had their first report submitted and it was an amazing report straight away. If it was, it probably means that they had some background knowledge or, just experience with Power BI. We all started off with reports that look probably like something. Well, my reports are never going to be seen again. I've deleted those. No, there's nobody sees those. those were my starting babies.
And watching these videos, the recording, it's really, really helpful, right?
Yeah,
Watch the workshop, what can be done, and then watch what's been done in the past and was successful. You also going to hear what could have what could have done better, and all right, I'm going to do it better than that example that was shown. So it's very good if you're starting to see how other people build the report, see what could have, and try to. You're not going to copycat anyone, but it's just in terms of what can work for using these type of visuals.
absolutely. I think it's one of the greatest things about these challenges is that even though every single one of you started off with the same bit of information, you created completely different approaches. And that's one of the interesting things about these sort of challenges is you just take a look at them and see, okay, that's something that I could definitely try to figure out how to do, right? Or implement in our case. Don't forget that all of these reports, you can download the PBIX files. You can see how the developer has done it. And the second thing is, the author, you have their LinkedIn profile, you can just reach out to them. Worst case scenario, they don't reply. So you're basically at the same position as you were before you messaged them. So you don't really lose anything, right? But I'll see you in the next report. Juliana, thank you so much for joining
Thank you
us
very
today.
much.
I hope it was interesting for you as well.
I love the experience. It's really nice because I have ideas from other people as well. I am always learning. I'm
Yep,
always looking. Oh, I really like the information button. I'm gonna start looking to do it because I think it's a really good way to let your user understand how to use the report.
definitely. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.